today we're going to talk a little bit more about Lightroom, a little less about workflow itself. But before I do that, I want to get to know who's in my audience here. So I'm going to do a show of hands thing, okay? I want everybody who shoots professionally, that means you get paid. Doesn't mean that it's your only job, but that you get paid to shoot photos. Raise your hand. Okay. So the other half of you are doing it as a love. You take pictures of your kids, grandkids. You take pictures of what? Shout it out. What do you?
Stuff.
Stuff. Take pictures of stuff. Educational stuff. Okay. Birds. All right. Anybody take pictures of mountains and trees? Okay. All right.
Yacht racing.
Yacht racing. Okay, that's a new one. Seasons. Okay. So architecture. Okay. So. I am a wedding and portrait photographer. That's how I make my money. So I shoot a lot of images. I don't just shoot, 100 or 200 or 300 or 400 or 500 a day or 600 a day or 700 a day. I shoot 5,000 in a day. So I have to work on a lot of photos, but I need to still get them done quickly and efficiently. And so my expertise in Lightroom is specifically in doing things quickly and in finding my images quickly so that I can deliver them to people. That's my expertise in Lightroom. So you can use Lightroom certainly on one or two images and really tweak them and work on them and have a great time with one image. But the beauty of Lightroom is that you can do multiple images at the same time. We can work on thousands of images, or we can work on one image, and really it's about the same amount of time because Lightroom can send changes across multiple photos at the same time. So Lightroom is a very quick way to work on a lot of images. That's its core. If you need to work on an image and do some major retouching and some changes and remove heads and swap them, and then you end up in Photoshop. So who uses Photoshop in here? Raise your hand. Okay, most people, either Elements or the full version. Great. Those of you who don't use Photoshop, I actually get 98% of everything I do done inside of Lightroom. And then 2 or 3 images out of every wedding I'll send to Photoshop and work on those. Because it's like a close-up and person has acne or flyaway hair, or there's a telephone pole where I don't want it, something like that. And then I can actually go into Photoshop and work on that image. So I just wanted you to understand where I come from and how much I'm using Lightroom versus Photoshop. Okay? All right, good. So I'm going to go into Lightroom here, and we're going to just talk a little bit about selection process and development process. Both of those are the two slow points in your workflow. Those are the two places that things slow down a little bit. It's hard to find images that you like. You end up spending a lot more time than you want to. Is there anyone here shoots a wedding? Anybody? Okay, those of you who shoot weddings, how many would you shoot on a given wedding? 3,000. Okay, so you're up with me. 3,000 on a, for me that's a mid-sized wedding. For a big wedding, I'll do 5,000. So 3,000 images on a wedding. How many do you select down to? 400. Very good. I love it. So hardcore editor right there. So he's very, very harsh. He's willing to kill his darlings, and that's the best way to edit. You got to be able to kill your darlings. So take 5,000 images, take them down to about 500 is my goal when I finish a wedding. So when you are selecting your images, there are several issues that you have to deal with, and in order to become a better editor, I'm going to give you 4 basic rules at becoming a better editor. And as I go through those rules, I'll talk about how I do those things inside of Photoshop, or I mean inside of Lightroom. So I'm going to go to a photograph set here. This is totally uncut. I haven't even looked at these images yet. Literally, I have not looked at the images. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a set of images, and I'll bounce around between different images. And you can see this is the very first shot of the day. It's blurry, out of focus. I was just grabbing the light to find out what my lighting was. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about these 4 rules and how you can become a better editor and how that translates into your experience in Lightroom. So the first thing that we have to follow as a rule, number one rule is, and write these down. The number one rule is that we do all of our editing in a distractionless environment. That means that you don't sit down to your computer and have your email on the other computer or have an email section on your other monitor or anything like that. You turn off Twitter, you turn off your cell phone, you don't watch Hulu while you're editing, right? You need to focus on the images. And I want you to think about the way you shoot as a photographer. When you go out into the field, are you doing other things while you shoot? No, you're paying attention to shooting, right? Otherwise you miss the shot or you don't get the composition right because you're not talking on your phone going, yeah, I had a great day. Yeah, it was really cool. You know, you're not doing that. You put your phone away and you're taking pictures. So I need you to recognize that there is no difference between the act of photography and the act of editing. They're the same concept. They use the same skills. They're the exact same process, and that is the art of selection. So when you're out in the field with your camera, like this, you're looking around and you're selecting an image in the field. You have 1 billion frame options, and I choose this one because she's close and I can stay in my light. And I can, I need my lens cap off. And I can take the picture, right? And then I'll look around for some more options. That's how I select in the field, right? Well, when I select here in the computer, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just taking a certain number of images. Instead of 1 billion frame options, now I have 5,000 frame options. And I'm choosing from those 5,000, I'm choosing 1 or 2 here and there. I'm cherry picking those images. So there's no difference. The process is exactly the same. Now, many of you have other jobs, right? You accountants and lawyers and whatever you happen to be. But your skill set out on the field, when you're working in photography, your skill set is what? Photography? That's pretty general. Your skill set is basically you are good at making visual decisions. That's it. That's your only skill set. If you have that skill set, you can be a good photographer. So I want you to trust that instinct that you have at making decisions. Okay? So, first rule, we have to get rid of the distractions. The second rule is that we're going to do things by gut instinct. Okay? We're going to treat the selection process the same way that we treat the photography process, and that is that we, as we're selecting, trust our instinct the same way that we trust our instinct out in the field and we take the picture. Okay? All right, so let's talk about those two rules first. When we're in a distractionless environment, obviously we've turned off our phones and get rid of the email and turn off Hulu and just focus on our images. But then we also have to consider what's distracting in front of us in our computer. So, for instance, I'm going to go to, going to mirror this really quickly. Okay, so now you see what I'm seeing on my screen, and that is we're looking at all of the images that I shot for this job. But it's very, if you look at this, what are you seeing? Are you seeing images or are you seeing other things? Other things. I'm seeing information over here, over there. I'm seeing more information on those grids than I am the pictures. This is a very distracting way to look at your photographs. Never select images in a grid like this. And by the way, the keystroke for this is G, grid G. Instead, we're going to hit the N key, and that's going to take us into survey mode. So I'm going to highlight a set of images. When I hit the survey mode, now I get a much nicer look at my images. And if I hit the tab key, I'll get rid of those distracting sidebars. Okay? This is the way we want to look at our images. We get rid of the distractions so that we're really focusing on our imagery. Now that we're in this type of a situation, this is the survey mode, which is the N key, now we can actually pay attention to the images themselves rather than being distracted by all of the sidebars and the information. Okay? Okay, so that's in keeping with rule number 1. All right, so we're looking at our images in the survey mode so that we can be in a distractionless environment. And by the way, if you're looking at yours, you probably start with a gray screen that looks like this. So all you have to do is right-click the background, and you can change it to black, white, gray, whatever. I like it black because then I'm looking only at my images. Okay? Okay, so we're in a distractionless environment, but we also need to do things by gut instinct. Okay? So I'm going to go to a little senior portrait that I did. Okay? And again, I haven't looked at these images either. And you'll notice I'm taking a lot of images here because I want to get the absolute best image of this senior that I possibly can. So I shoot the heck out of my images. I shoot. Because I don't have any concern about how long it's going to take me to get these images selected and adjusted. I just want to shoot as many as I can to get the absolute best photograph that I can. So I'm going to look at these images here, but instead of looking at them in the grid mode, I go into the survey mode, and down at the bottom there's a little triangle on all 4 sides of your screen. If I want to look at the, this is called the film strip. If I want to look at the film strip, I just simply click on that triangle, it brings it up, and I'm going to start working through these images. If I click the first image and then shift click to another set, I get this. And that's about the right amount of images vertically to start choosing from. So I can look through these images, and if I don't see anything I like, which at this point I don't see anything great, so I click on that image, the next image, and shift click, grab some more images, and I just keep looking through, looking for images that strike my fancy. Now you'll notice, what am I doing here? Am I laboring over these images? I'm not. I'm moving through them very quickly. In fact, I'm following 2 more rules. One of the rules that I'm following is called comparative review. That's your 3rd rule, that you do everything by comparative review. When you're out in the field shooting, you don't walk around like this, do you? This is not how you select your images. Right? What we want is we want comparative review. This is comparative. I get to see all of you at the same time, and then one person strikes me as interesting, so I turn to this man here, and I say, he's interesting, so I'm going to look at him, and now I'll pull up the camera and look, and then I choose my frame, right? That's how I work as a photographer. So you should work the same way when you're in the selection process. So I need multiple images up at one time. Never look at your images like this. A or B, A or B, A or B. It's like a eye doctor's office, right? Never look at your images like this. Because if you look at one image at a time, you're going to A, take a long time at making the decision, and B, you're never going to make the right decision. The way to make correct decisions is to have multiple options in front of you at the same time. It's the same way that you buy a car. It's the same way that you chose your spouse. It's the same way that you choose everything by looking at multiple options and choosing the best one. So, my suggestion to you is that you should always have at least 3 or 6 or 12 images in front of you at a time. Now, I look at images that are similar to each other, and then I'll choose one of those images. So that's rule number 3, that you're always going to do it by comparative review. Rule number 4 is that you're going to do it by positive selection. So instead of looking at images and saying, no, 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 no. There were 6 images that I brought up on my screen, and I didn't like any of them. So I just hit 6 keys to register that I didn't want any of those. When what I could have done is I could have looked at them all like this and said, nope, don't want any of those. And I could have gone to the next 6 images and looked at those. If you're pushing a key to register a decision on every photo you take, you're wasting a lot of time. Because these images that aren't any good, they already know they're not any good. If you don't select them, they already feel rejected. Right? They feel bad about themselves as it is. There's no reason for you to rub salt in the wound and make them feel worse about themselves. Just let them rest on the garbage pin, and just go with the ones you've selected. So instead, I'm going to look at a set of images and say, okay, well, I like, let's see. Yeah, I don't like any of those. So I'm going to go to the next set of images. I like that one. So I'm going to zoom in, make sure that it's sharp, and then I'm going to pick it with the P key. All the rest are rejected because they weren't picked. And in the end, I can then sort by all my picks. I can take them and put them in their own little folder. All the rest can be deleted or moved off to another drive or taken care of in some way. You can do whatever you want with those, but the picks are the ones that remain. So, you have 4 rules there. You do everything distractionless environment. You make sure that you are picking, so you're doing things by comparative review, and then you're doing them by positive selection, and you're doing it by gut instinct. So I'm not spending a lot of time laboring. I'm not going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, trying to find the right one. I'm simply reacting to them the same way I react when I'm photographing. Follow those 4 rules, and you're going to find that your process in the selection is much faster. Okay? All right. So let me talk a little bit then about Lightroom in the library mode since we're here. Okay? How many of you have already been in Lightroom 3? Most everybody. Who has never seen Lightroom before? Okay, just a couple of you. So I'm going to assume that we all know something about Lightroom. Those of you who don't, just keep up with us. So I'm going to talk about things that are a little different in Lightroom 4 as opposed to the things that were in Lightroom 3. Everybody's seen published services before. How many of you have used published services? Just a couple. Published services are one of the greatest additions to Lightroom 3, and they're a great addition to Lightroom 4 as well. If you're not using published services, let me just quickly put a plug in for these published services. You can create a published service it's basically a automated publishing service that will throw images out. Like it'll develop an image and throw it out to a place on your hard drive or a place on the web automatically. So you can throw things in there and then just hit publish and it'll send them out. And if you change something, it will change the published image out there. The way I use the publish service is I actually make a portfolio publish service, and it puts it on my hard drive as the JPEGs for my portfolio. And then I sync my iPad to that hard drive folder. So every time I hit publish from my portfolio, my Lightroom 4 portfolio, it just simply goes and changes anything in that folder that I've changed in Lightroom. And then when I sync my iPad, my portfolio has changed on my iPad. So when I go to a sales call and I'm looking at images with someone, all of my latest portfolio images are on the iPad. Okay? So a very simple way to get images to the right place and change them. If I turn it to black and white here, so if I make a publish service, like if I go to this published folder, you can see there are 2 images in this that would be in this published folder. They're not published yet. See this? It says new photos to publish up here. If I hit the publish up here, those 2 images will then be published to a specific folder on my desktop. If I change them to black and white, so like for instance, if I take this image and decide I like this image but I want it to be black and white, so if I did that, when I go back to the publish service, it's changed to black and white. So then when I hit publish, it will go and grab the color image that was there and it will replace it with a black and white. Okay? So you can constantly update that portfolio. You can constantly update someone. Does anyone use Dropbox? Great service, right? You can publish things to people. If you have a Dropbox, simply just make one of your Dropbox folders a publish service. So you publish to the Dropbox and it will change, and everybody that's privy to that Dropbox will see all the changes happening inside of that folder on Dropbox. Okay? So there's a lot of ways to use those publish services. The other way to use those is with Facebook, Flickr, those types of services. So Facebook's awesome. You set it up, publish to Facebook, and it'll put it on your Facebook. Don't want it on Facebook anymore? Delete it, and it'll pull it off of Facebook. Fantastic way to interface with Facebook without actually having to open Facebook. Okay? All right. So publish services are great. Use them if you haven't used them. All right, let me go back to these images. I'm going to sort by some of my favorite images here really quickly. So here are my favorite images from a little engagement photo shoot that I did. And I want to go now to the develop module. Really, those of you who've used Lightroom 3, the library module is very much the same. There's not a lot of changes. Obviously, some of the changes in the quick develop section were changed because the develop section has changed a bit. So I want to go into the develop section and talk about that because those are fantastic changes. So let's go into the develop module and let's talk about some cool changes that have happened in Lightroom 4. The first amazing change is that you'll notice the exposure knob is the only, there's no brightness knob. Brightness knob disappeared. Exposure knob now takes the place of both the exposure knob and the brightness knob. Now, Lightroom 2, Lightroom 3, Lightroom 1, all of those, I used to tell people don't touch the exposure knob because the exposure knob was dangerous. It would blow things out. It would throw away pixels. It was a really bad knob. And so I would only use it to decrease exposure, not to increase exposure. If I wanted to brighten a photo, I would take the brightness knob and move it up. Right? That's how I interfaced with the exposure knob. Always in the negative, never in the positive. But I think that they listened to what I was saying, and they probably also noticed that no one else was touching the exposure knob, so they got rid of the exposure knob, and now they call the brightness knob the exposure knob. So they got rid of the brightness knob altogether, and now exposure is a combination of brightness and exposure, but it's more like a brightness knob, less like the exposure knob. So it's kind of an intelligent mix of the two. So now you now have permission to use the exposure knob. Okay? Now, I do want to say this. If you are questioning Lightroom 4, let's say you're like, I like the brightness knob. I like the old school way of doing things in Lightroom 3. Simply go down to the camera calibration down at the bottom and change your process version from 12 to 2010. Then when you go back up to the basics, you'll notice that all of the Lightroom 3 controls are back. So you can run Lightroom 3 to your heart's content inside of Lightroom 4. So never allow yourself to use the excuse of, I like Lightroom 3 better because of whatever. If that's the case, go ahead and use the controls in Lightroom 3, but use them in the 4 environment because 4 has more cool things in it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Well, would we be missing out on what you're calling these amazing benefits?
Yes, of course.
So,
Yes, so would we miss out on the amazing benefits if we went back to the 2010 math? Absolutely, you'd miss out on it, and that's why you should just move on with the times, right?
You can't have both.
Yeah, you can't. Don't get stuck in the past. Let's move on. We're over 2010. That was so 2 years ago. Okay, so we're going to stay in 2012 math, which means that we get to use all the cool stuff. Okay. But if you did stay in Lightroom 3, you certainly could use the book module, the map module, all those other things. You can use a lot of those things just fine. You just can't use the great tools that they've given you in the develop module. Okay, so here we are in the develop module. I want you to pay attention then to these new controls. The exposure knob is new. It's a better exposure knob. There is no brightness knob, so that's where you're going to get your general brightness from. When you look at that exposure knob being used, you can see up in the histogram, which is up here, right there. When I touch the exposure knob, it actually gives you a highlighted area in the middle. Those are your midtones, showing you where it's going to actually affect the photo. So if I grab the exposure knob and I brighten it up, it's bringing up the midtones, but see how it's trying to protect? Watch this right-hand side of the histogram, the gray, the yellow, and the red peak there. It's going to try and protect those. Watch as I raise it up, it's trying to keep from pushing those off the top. So it's trying to protect the highlights as much as possible, but bringing up the midtones. Now, another thing that's changed inside of Lightroom 4 is that it used to be that your blacks were down here at the bottom. They were at 0 or at 5 or 2 or 3 to start with. And if you wanted your blacks to get blacker, you moved the black knob to the right. You increase the black knob to increase the black. Didn't make a lot of sense because it was reversed. You're making things darker by bringing the knob to the right. So what they've done is they've started you in the middle, all of these in the middle. See that? So we're all starting in the middle. If I want my shadows to get darker, I simply move them to the left and they get darker. If I want the shadows to be brighter, I move them to the right and they get brighter. Pretty rational. So what they've done is they've just given you a more rational view of the way that your photo will look. So if you want your highlights or your whites to get brighter, you move them to the right. If you want your highlights and whites to get darker, you move them to the left. Same thing with the shadows and the blacks. Now, you'll notice that there aren't any recovery and fill light knobs. That's because recovery and fill light are now integrated into all 4 of these. So as you increase or decrease your highlights and your shadows, it will recover or it will fill light as needed. So for instance, in this case, I've got here in her hair, I've got black hair. If I want to make sure I see more detail in that hair, I'll take the blacks and I will increase my blacks and you'll see that it's filling in. See that? I can start to see data inside of there. So I'm adding fill light by brightening up the blacks. Let me go to a different set of images really quickly, because I have a cute little photo here. There we go. This photo. I like this photo. So that's a cool photo. But you can see that I've got some highlights here that are blowing out. I don't really care about those highlights all that much, but I certainly wouldn't want the hair here to blow out. So if I reset this photo to its original state, well, I guess it's not really, I thought that might blow out, but it's not. So let's pretend it's blowing out. So there we go, say it's blowing out. I would then, in order to recover, I would simply take my highlights down. See that? So it's recovering based on pulling the highlights down. And I also recovers based on pulling the whites down. See that? So both of those tools are recovering information based on your request to take whites or highlights down. Okay? So it's just kind of an intelligent tool that will work with you to recover or to add fill light. All right. Now, where this becomes really my favorite addition to the Develop module is inside of the selective adjustment tools like the brush or your gradient tool. Notice that there's a whole bunch of new controls right here. So I've got temperature and tint now inside of my selective adjustment tools, which is fantastic because who's ever shot a picture of someone at sunset? Right? And so the sunset looks great, but the people look orange. And if you make the people not look orange, then the sunset stops looking orange. Well, now you can adjust your photo for sunset. So let's just say in this case, let's adjust my image the way I want it to look. So I take the temperature up because I want it to be really warm in the background. But the more I warm up the background, they get a little too warm. See, they're too warm, but I like the warmth of the background here. And I'm going to brighten this up just a little bit. And I'm going to bring the highlights down so that I recover some of that. I don't want that to blow out, so I'm going to, there. So I don't want them to be that warm, but I do want the background to be that warm. And so now I'm going to go into the brush tool. And in the brush tool, I'll simply take, I'm going to say I want to use temperature. So all these are set at 0. and I'm going to take my temperature and cool it off a little bit. And now I can go in on their faces and just cool down their faces a bit. Let's cool her down a little bit. And I can, after the fact, decide how cool or how warm I want their faces to be. There. So now I have effectively adjusted two different color balances in the image, one for the background and one for the subject. And it's all done in RAW, which means I'm getting the absolute best quality color adjustment on the images. Is that cool or what? Love it. You can also use that inside of the gradient. Now, if you're using a gradient for that purpose, let's go to an image that's inside. So like here's a shot inside, and you're going to have warm light coming from inside and cool light coming from outside. So if you adjust an image for the inside color temperature, so you get your image so that it's adjusted perfectly for the inside, but the outside color temperature is a little too blue for you. This one's fine, but it's a good example. Click on the gradient, and we'll just take our temperature up just a little bit and drag a gradient starting at 100% here where I click, and drag it across. So now you can see it's warmer over here, and by the time it hits the middle of the photograph, then it's 0% color temperature change. And so I'm going to turn this on and off, and you can see what we've done to the image. See that? So it's warmed up this side of her face, but it hasn't warmed up this side of her face. So this side's warm, this side is left alone, so now she's more evenly colored. Does that make sense? Great. So those are some pretty impressive things. The other couple things that have been put inside of these selective adjustments is that you can actually paint in sharpness, you can paint in noise reduction, you can also paint in a moire reducer. So does everybody know what a moire is? Yep. Not a moire, that's love, but moire. Moire patterns are created when you have like real tight patterns on shirts or like tweed jackets or whatever, and it looks like a grease stain, it looks like oil, right? Like an oil spill or something. And so what that is the pixels get confused as to where the colors are supposed to go, and because of that weird pattern, it's fighting the pixel pattern, and so it creates these weird color patterns. What you can do is paint that out. Simply take the moire down and paint, and it will remove the moire by kind of intelligently discovering the colors around it and painting over the top of the grease or the oil-looking pattern. So if you find moire in one of those weird patterns on a shirt or something, you can certainly paint it out with the moire. So those are some of the great things that are left inside. Oh, and also, I want to talk about burning and dodging. Who likes to burn and dodge? If you're not burning and dodging your images, you're really missing out on a great way to take a regular image and make it pretty astounding. So I'm going to go to here. Let's just find a really normal image here. Okay, so there's this sheep, and the kids really wanted me to take a picture of the sheep, so I took a picture of the sheep. So there's my sheep. Now what am I going to do with this? It's a pretty boring picture. First thing I'm going to do, and by the way, most of the time when I work, I use a keyboard replicator like this. This one's made by RPG Keys. We have some over there if you're interested in them. The RPG key basically allows me to choose the keys I use the most and put them here so that I don't have to hunt and peck for them, or I don't even have to go over to my left-hand side and start clicking on my presets. I can simply click them here. So for instance, if I want to change this thing to black and white, I just push the black and white button, changes it to black and white. If I want it to be sepia, I add a little sepia to it. If I want to, oh, hold on, sorry. There we go. So if I want a little sepia to it, I add a little bit of sepia to it. If I want to brighten it up just a little bit, I can click a couple brightness I actually want to bring up see how it's a little dark on that sheep? So if I want to bring up the blacks a little bit, I can see that. I can brighten that up a bit. I'm going to add a really tight vignette on that so that it kind of focuses it in on the sheep, right? So all of those things are being controlled by this. So I don't really have to hunt and peck for things. I can just click on these and just pretty much get an image right where I want it before I do anything else. Now, once I've gotten to this point, maybe I want to do a little bit more work on the image, and I want to really, like say I want to brighten up that sheep even more, but I don't want to brighten up the whole image. So at this point, I'm going to go to the brush tool, and I'm going to click on a preset that I've created, and I call it Smart Dodge. And I want you to pay attention to the settings. This is why we're having this discussion. When you dodge something, who's done stuff in the darkroom before? Okay, what happens when you dodge?
You're blocking.
You're blocking, and so it gets brighter because you're just putting less, you're exposing less silver. But what happens to the black? It gets lighter too. It gets thin.
Texture.
And so you kind of get more texture, but you also get thin black. And it doesn't look good. We want deep, dark black in the print, and we want nice white whites, right? That's kind of what we want. So the problem with dodging anything is that you get thin. So what we do, you'll notice here, I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see the settings. The settings are really important. You'll notice that I've taken the exposure up to 1, so up 1.07. I've added contrast to this exposure setting because I want to push the black back down, right? And I've also taken the shadows. See how far I've taken the shadows down? So what's happening is I'm brightening up the entire image, but I'm shoving black back down so that the midtones and the highlights are coming up, but the blacks are staying right where they were so that we have those rich blacks in the photograph, but we have these nice bright whites and the midtones coming up. So when you do a dodge, you don't just want to increase the exposure, because then you'll get these kind of thin, ugly blacks, and it just won't look good. So that's why we do that. Now watch the way that happens then. So I come in here, and I'm going to start working on this sheep. So oops. Yeah, okay. So it's going to darken it down a little bit because that's still a pretty dark sheep there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the exposure up a little bit more on this, and we're going to not go so deep with the shadows. And now we're brightening up that sheep there. But notice when we zoom into it, because we've kept the shadows down, that we've still got nice rich blacks, even inside of the what is a fur, hair, fur, whatever. Wool. A sheep has wool. There we go. So I'm the ultimate farmer, right? So notice there in the wool, you still have nice rich blacks inside of these little caverns here inside of the sheep. So I can keep brightening this up. And then after the fact, I can go in and change a little bit more and say, okay, how much do I really want to brighten this up? Now, you will notice, though, I have a problem. The sheep looks like an angel sheep, right? It's glowing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into that, and I'm going to see this brush area right here? I can have a brush A, brush B, or erase. So now I'm going to go in and erase around the sheep, and I can erase either by hand, like this, or I can do what's called auto mask. Auto mask helps to find edges, like right here at the sheep's nose. I don't want the sheep's nose to get any darker, so if I turn on auto mask and I start painting on the grass, it will find that edge and recognize that the edge is where we want to stop painting. So I'm going to click on here and I'm erasing, but notice that the nose doesn't get any darker. It's only doing the grass edges. And then I'll do the same thing right here, and it's finding those edges, and it's not painting into the sheep itself. And I'll do the same thing right here. See that? So I'm painting. Now, you do have to be a little bit careful with this because sometimes you can get some weird pixelation things on edges because it finds happens a lot in a face. Like say you have a whisker, so like the guy has stubble, and you start doing auto mask, it'll see the little black stubble as an edge, and so it'll start trying to paint around those, and you get some weird pixelation. So at that point, you would go into auto mask, turn it off, and kind of clean up the erase that you've just been doing. Okay? But now if I zoom out, you can see I still have that that halo here in the sky, but look at the edge here is perfect. So the grass is perfectly normal, but the sheep is still up. So let me turn this on and off, and you'll see what we've done to the sheep. See that? I still need to erase some of this off out here deep in the grass. But now if you turn this on and off, look at that. That edge of that sheep is perfectly done based on that auto mask. Now, if you're used to Lightroom 3's auto mask, it was much worse. I mean, that was like the first try, and it wasn't all that great. But auto mask in Lightroom 4, a little bit better at it. So you can use that auto mask a lot more in Lightroom 4 than you could in Lightroom 3. Okay, so when you are working on brightening up a portion of your image with whether you're using the brush tool or you're using the gradient tool, make sure that you add shadows back into that so that when you're brightening something up, the blacks don't get thin. You want them to stay rich. Okay? All right.
Did you say, is the Smart Dodge set up with those as defaults? Or
No, I created that. And by the way, if you're looking at my presets over here and you're looking at all of my presets in the brush tools and stuff and you covet them, that's okay because you can get them. Just go to jaredplattworkshops.com and you can buy any of those that you like. But I am going to tell you today how to make really good presets. Okay? Does everybody want to know how to make a really good preset? Okay. Because most of you will find, and in the develop module, one of the most important things you can do to speed your workflow along is to make good presets. So if you want to make good presets, you need to follow the following rules. Number one, when you look at, and I'm going to turn off this set of presets, I'm going to go to my everyday favorites because that gives you a pretty good view of what they do. Okay, so if you look at my everyday favorite presets here, you will see that they are coded at the beginning of the preset. The preset does not just say, split tone, because S in alphabetical order puts it down at the bottom, but I want it up at the top. So I put a code 00, 01, 02, 03. That holds it in place because it's an alphanumeric system. It'll always put it in alphabetical order. So I always put a code up front to make sure that I get the right organization. Okay, so that's rule number one, is name them with a code at the beginning. Rule number two is name them rationally. Can you notice the names of these are soft desaturation. What do you suppose soft desaturation does? That softly desaturates the image. You are amazing.
I really am.
You are. You're quite brilliant. So I'm going to ask you again, and let's see if you can get two. What do you think that remove split tone does?
I imagine that you have a split tone image that you no longer want split tone.
And what does it do?
And it takes that.
And it removes the split tone. You are brilliant again. So you could name it Funky 70s School Bus, but what's that going to do for you? How do you know what that does?
I wouldn't know.
Don't know.
As brilliant as I am.
There's a lot of presets out there that are named these funky cool, they call it Supa Dupa and whatever. I don't know what they do. I want my presets renamed rationally so that I know what they do without having to look at the, so if you look here, you can always see in the navigator, see that? You can see what these are going to do to the image, right? So you can see what they're going to do, but I don't want to have the navigator open because I want to see more presets. I don't want to have to scroll to find my presets. I want to just be able to get to them. So rationally name them, that way you know what they're going to do. Okay, so that's rule number two. Rule number 3 in making good presets is that you want to make sure that your presets are targeted. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Targeted presets are only going to do very little specific things. If you make a preset that does everything in the kitchen sink, and you go to an image, say like this one, and you decide, I want to do everything in the kitchen sink here, and it does 25 things to this image, but then you didn't want all 25 of those things, now you've got to go fix the image. So you've lost the time increase by having to go back. So you did this huge preset that did everything to this image. Let's say it adds clarity and vibrance, and it increased the shadows and really kind of contrasty, and then it turned it to black and white, and it added some split tone to the image, and it also, oh here, let's see, it added a lens vignette. So I'm making up some random preset. It's not a good preset. But I made this random vignette, and it had lots of grain on it, and that's good. So let's say that's the preset you wanted to make, and you made it all do that all at once. With one click you did this, but then you thought, I don't want to do a vignette. Now what do you have to do? You have to go over here and scroll down and find the vignette that you made. So you're going to look here, lens correction, you have to go to the manual, and then you have to zero this out. That's no fun. That's a waste of your time. Instead, we're going to reset this image. What I want to do is I want to go to my presets and I say, I want this to be a black and white. I would like a light sepia with kind of an aged look to it. I would like to have 800 speed grain on it, and I would like to have the lens correction on it so that it flattens it out, and I would like to have a medium tone curve on it, and I would like to have a strong wide vignette on it. Oh, wait a second. Maybe I don't want to have the film grain on there, so instead of having to go over here and remove it, I simply hit this little preset that says remove grain, and now the grain's taken off. Do you see how I was able to do everything over on the left-hand panel without ever having to go to the right-hand panel? And I never had to go into anything down here. I can spend my entire editing time, okay, so talking 500 images I'm delivering to a client, and I will not once go into the tone curve, black and white, split toning, detail, lens, effect, or camera calibration. Not one time. Because all of the stuff here can be done in a preset without any problems. All I have to do is adjust the image so that it's the right brightness and contrast and the right temperature, go over there and finish the image. That's it. That's all I have to do. So you want to speed yourself along, make your presets. And if you're going to buy presets, buy the right kind of presets. Buy presets that are rationally designed, which I think I'm the only one that makes them. But, you know. Okay, so when we make a preset, so let's make a preset. I'm going to go to an image. I'm going to go to that image that I really, really like. I showed you earlier. Hold on. Let me find it. This one. I really like this image. I think it's cool. And I'm going to reset it. And now you're going to shout out what we're going to do. You guys decide what we're doing to the image. What are we doing? What's that? Fix it? Okay, we're going to fix the image. So I'm going to take the exposure up until we have the right exposure. I'm going to take the black down. I'm going to add a little bit more contrast to it, and I'm going to add a little clarity, and I'm going to add a little bit of warmth to the image. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I like that general look. Actually, I don't. I was looking at my screen, not yours. Hold on. Take the shadows up just a little bit. And I'm going to take the blacks up just a little bit more. And I'm going to warm it up just a little bit more. And brighten it just, there we go. And let's turn off the highlight warnings because, there. Okay, so I like that as a normalized image. So it's normalized, it's correct. Now, what are we going to do with it? Let's put some style to it. What do you want to do?
Convert it black and white.
Okay, we want to go black and white with it. What else do we want to do? More contrast. So let's go to the tone curve, because that's the best place to do contrast is in the tone curve. So let's take the shadows and the darks down a bit and take the lights up. Is that good contrast? Okay, so we got good contrast. What else do we want to do to it?
Vignette.
Okay, let's vignette it. Do we want to do a vignette that follows the crop, or do we want to do a vignette that looks like a lens fall off?
Let's take a look at what the lens looks like.
Lens fall off vignette, here we come. So we're going into lens, into the manual section, and I'm going to take the amount all the way down so I can see what I'm working with, and then I'll find out what, where the midpoint's going to be. So I'd say that's a good midpoint. I'm going to take the vignette off a little bit. That looks pretty good. So let's do that. Now what? Anything else we want to do this? Come on, don't be shy.
Put some more detail in her hair.
More detail, okay? So let's go into the detail section and let's create some more detail, but I don't like to do too much over sharpening. So instead of using the amount and radius, I'll go to the detail section because it looks for bigger pieces to create. So I'm going to go in and let's go here, and I'm going to do a little bit more detail there. And probably you were looking at this. You want to get more back there, right?
Correct.
Okay. So in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the brush, and I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to make it into a one-stop. Well, let's do a light burn. Maybe that'll probably get us back there. And I'm just going to start painting in a burn, one-stop burn, to get a little bit more detail back in that hair. Now, some of that hair is probably not worth worrying about, but we can certainly get a good portion of the hair back. Let's see if there's some over here that, oh, we need to get some of that back. So I'm going to pull some of that back in, and I'm going to, so we did a little painting in there and get some of that detail back in the hair. We could work on that some more, but I don't want to spend too much time on it, but we got a little bit of detail back in there. What else do we want to do? Anything? What? Brighten her eyes. Okay, that's good. So let's go to make a new brush. So now we're working on a different type of brush, and we'll go to the Smart Dodge, and we'll zoom in so that we can see her eyes, and we'll brighten up her eyes just a little bit. Oh, okay, I just want to make sure we're on auto mask. And we're just gonna add a little bit of brightness into her eyes there. And then I'm gonna take the shadows up a little bit because we want to keep that up.
Can you add some catch light?
Oh, that's a good point. Do we want to add a catch light in there? We could certainly add a catch light. I'm going to make a new brush. This time I'm going to use a different preset, and we're going to call it Lights On. That's what it's called. But I don't want to add color to it, so I do have to remove this little color portion here. Usually I use it for turning on lights that are off. Have you ever shot a picture and the light's off? Well, you can turn the light back on digitally. That's perfectly doable. If I see a light somewhere here, I'll do it for you. But so now I'm just going to really go down low on this, and I'm just going to click on there. And so there, see, that's a pretty big catch light, right? So let's undo that, and let's make it even smaller. There. How's that for a catch light? Is that too small? Mm-hmm. All right. Geez, you guys are.
Photoshop comes in. So easy in Photoshop.
How's that? That's a pretty good catch light, right? And now, if it's too bright, I simply take my exposure down. How's that for a catch light? Okay. Do I need Photoshop? No, I don't need Photoshop. Okay, now that's not to say you shouldn't buy Photoshop, you just don't need it. Now, I own Photoshop, I love Photoshop, but I just don't go to it all that often. Okay, so I need another one in this eye right here, so let's just go boop, right there. Now I've got my little catch lights. All right, what else do you want to do? Let's be done with this. Okay, great, we're done with this. All right, so now, what I want to do is create a preset from this. So I go to the top of the preset area and I push the plus button. When I get to the plus, I'm going to create a preset by checking none. Because now you have to think. The foolish man clicks all and creates a preset. And so every time he pushes the preset, it does everything we just did, which is not what you want to do. because every image is different. What you can do, though, is create about 5 presets from this set of this work. So the first thing that you'll do is say, okay, well, we made a vignette, right? So we can go and make a lens vignette preset. And then we can name that preset, and we can put it in one of the folders that we've created, so in the vignette folder. And we can name this vignette, and we would name it like 05 if we wanted to be in the 5th position. And then we would say strong, wide vignette, right? And that's how we'd name it and hit create. So now we would have that vignette as a preset. So if you want the vignette, you click on it. Then we'd come back here, and instead of choosing vignette, we would choose what? What else did we do to it? We made it a black and white, but we made it a contrasty black and white. So we could either have it a contrasty black and white, or we could do the black and white first, and then we could, after we finish making that preset, we could come back and make a contrast vignette by turning off the black and white and turning on the tone curve. And then when we do the tone curve, we would call this strong contrast, and then we'd make that as a preset. The reason that we would separate all these out is so that now Permutations works on our side. Does anybody know what a permutation is? Okay, so if I have 3 items and 3 items, how many combinations do I have? 9. Right, so it's not 6, it's a multiplication, right? So now we can exponentially increase the number of presets we have. So if I have 30 presets that are unique and individual to themselves, how many do I have? 900, I think. Anyway, a lot. A lot. The problem with most people's presets is that they actually go through, when they're making a preset, they go through and they make every variation that they can. So they do like black and white with sepia, black and white with blue tone, black and white with blue tone with contrast, black and white with blue tone without contrast, black and white with blue tone with contrast and grain, black and white with blue tone without grain, black and white with blue tone with grain and vignette, black and white without vignette and with blue tone. And so you have to scroll through 6,000 presets to get the one you want. If you make them the way I'm suggesting you make them, you can make 30 presets and now you have 900 presets. Because you just simply click the things you need, and there's every possible variation that you could possibly ask for. Okay? That's how you create good vignette or good presets. Okay? So what happens then is instead of having to go through all of the detail that we just went through, I can go to an image. So let's go to, say, this image. I don't like that image. Let's go to this image. And I can take, all I have to do first is get the exposure where I want it. So I'm going to bring this up a little bit, take the blacks down just a little bit, and give it a little bit more warmth. So now I take that image, and now I can go over to my favorites and say, what do I want done with it? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to have kind of a portrait film look. So I just, by pushing that, I just kind of muted the saturation a little bit and added a little bit of grain to it. And then I can go down here and I say, you know what, I want more grain added to that. So I'm going to do an 800 grain, and I want to make sure that I do a bit of a vignette, and now I'm done. But it's unique to that image what I wanted done. And I never had to go in here and do anything, because all those styles can be added on their own. Yeah?
How'd you get the preset dialog box again?
At the very top, little plus button, right? Pretty much everything in Lightroom is the same. That little plus button is all over the place. So if you want to create something, there's usually a plus button right there. If you want to make a preset over here in, say, one of these brushes, you just click on this right below. Here, let me zoom in here and you can see it. Right at the very top, it says Effect, and then there's a drop down. If you go to the bottom of this drop down menu, you will see Save Current Settings as a new preset. So all you have to do is create your brush the way you want it, and then save it as a preset, and now it will show up in this list. If you buy one of mine, you just simply go and, you go to your Lightroom preferences, and then in the preset area, you say Show Lightroom Presets folder, and this is the folder where all of your presets go. and you're going to put things in. If it's a develop preset, you put it in the develop presets. But if it's a local adjustment preset, which is what these are called, then it goes in here. And you can see all those same presets that were in that drop down are right there. So if you make one and you want to put it on another computer, this is where you grab it, copy it, move it over to the other computer, and put it in the same folder on the other computer. And now both of your computers will be the same. Okay? Typically speaking, I use my desktop to create all of the structure for my presets that I want. And then I go in and I copy this entire Lightroom folder right here that you can find just simply by clicking on this button in your preferences. And I copy this, and I copy it over to my computer, and I put it in the same place, copy over the Lightroom folder in my laptop, and now I have matching presets in everywhere I go. They're all the same. So if I look at my desktop and my laptop, all the presets, everything's the same. Everything's in the same place, so I can work in both places, and I won't feel like it's any different. Okay?
You have folders in your presets. Is there a? No, I've never thought of doing that.
Yes, folders will help you stay organized, and that's another rule: is to organize your presets in folders. Because if you don't organize them in folders, see, I've got a lot of folders here. See that?
Yeah.
If I don't organize them in folders, I have to scroll for hours to find a specific preset. Instead, what you'll notice is that I've got them in folders of like things. So I've got an Everyday Favorites folder, which is where I generally work from. I also have a Platt Mini right here. Those presets, if I open that, I can use my keypad to do all of my presets. So again, if I want to turn it to black and white, so all of the presets that I'm accessing on this are inside of this little folder. These are the ones that I use with this keypad. So if I want to change the vignette from a wide vignette, I want to actually do a post-crop vignette instead, I just click on this, and now I'm going to have a post-crop vignette. See that? So I just added a post-crop vignette here, but I never had to go over there and touch it. So I can anything I want to work here, I just put over there, and then I assign on this keypad what I want it to do. So I just go in here and say I want button number 1 to do, and then I tell it Lightroom 4, button number 5, I want it to do, and then I tell it what to do. So here I'm telling it I want it to be, let me zoom in on that so you can see, I want it to be sharpen it. So that's my sharpening button, is button number 5, option 2 on the button. So it's pretty easy to program. But if you get one of these, by the way, I'll quickly tell you what these are. These are RPG keys. They make a big key set or a small one like this. So you can see them over here. If you get one of these, you can either buy them so that you own it for $349, or you can lease them for $19, and then you're in the club and they just keep giving you the new stuff. So you never have to upgrade. Every time there's a new program, they send you the new program. Every time there's new presets, they send you new presets. If the keyboard gets advanced, you can just swap yours for the next one. So if you're interested in these, see us afterwards. We have some over there. What you'll have to do is fill out a credit card, so they'll bill you. You get 2 months to try it out. If you don't like it, send it back, and that doesn't cost you a thing. If you like it, keep it, and they'll start billing your credit card either for purchasing it or for leasing it. So if you're interested, come and grab these, but they're a fantastic tool to be able to access all this stuff in Lightroom. The great thing about it, I love the fact that I can go to the exposure and I can brighten up the exposure. It's accessing the actual controls there through here. So I want, say, to add a little bit of clarity, so I add some clarity to it. I want to add some contrast, so I add a little bit of contrast. I can take the blacks down just a little bit, make them a little darker. I can do all that from a keypad. So I'm not hunting for things, and I'm not going over and adjusting them. So anyway, if you're interested, come see us afterwards. Okay, so all right. Now let's talk about some other cool things inside of Lightroom that I love. So I'm going to go to the maps.
You're not going to go into soft proofing?
What's that?
Soft proofing.
So, oh, you want to? All right, I'll talk about soft proofing. Soft proofing, right at the bottom, is a new feature, soft proofing. Soft proofing, the concept behind soft proofing is to allow you to see what it will look like if it's being printed or if it's being put on the web or whatever. If I click on soft proofing, the first thing you'll notice is that the background changes to white because it's trying to mimic a piece of paper. Then if I go to the top area right next to my histogram, you'll notice that I can change the profile. So I can click and say, what is it going to look like on Artesian 810710 premium glossy paper? So I click on that, and it changes the image to be what it would look like on that paper, which is not all that different from what you're looking at. But you could, if you print to, say, an Epson or a Canon printer, if you want to know what it's going to look like on that paper before you print it, you just simply click on the profile that you've brought in for that printer and that paper, and it's going to show you what that's going to look like. And if it's a yellow paper, if it's kind of a rough yellower paper, like a warm tone paper, this will get warm. And it'll show you the whites a little bit warmer so that you can see exactly what it's going to look like when it gets printed. Another thing that they've done is in the print module, they've actually created print adjustments. So now every time you print to the printer, it needs to be brightened up a little bit, you can actually go, so let's go to the print module just so you can see what that looks like. When you go to the print module, when you hit print, you can tell it that you're going to adjust the image. See that? You turn on print adjustment, and then you can tell it every time you print a little bit brighter with a little bit more contrast because my printer needs that. And you can set that up then as a preset over here so that if you print on artesian paper, it needs a little more contrast, but if you print on glossy, it needs no contrast. And you can set them up to be different presets so that every time you print on a specific paper, it will always print out with a little extra brightness and a little more contrast or whatever you need. So they've done a good job at trying to make these the printing process easier for you, and you can see it ahead of time. So that's what the soft proofing is. Okay, yeah, it is a good feature. Okay, let's go back then. I'm going to turn off the soft proofing, and I'm going to go to the maps. Maps is a cool way to find photos. So this is where I live. Okay, I live down next to South Mountain in Phoenix, Arizona. But I want to see where all of the photos of these little kids that I just took, I want to see where they were taken. The problem is my camera does not have GPS on it. Crap. But I do have an iPhone. And the iPhone has a tracker on it. Show them that little tracker. I have a tracker, a GPS tracker, on my iPhone. The problem is that once I turn it on, the life of my iPhone goes down to like 2.5 hours. It just drains constantly. So it's a cool little tracker, but it doesn't do me a lot of good because then I can't make a phone call 2 hours later. So that's why I really like the idea of this little USB device. Plug it in, throw it in your bag, and then wherever you are, it's just tracking your location. At the end, you plug it into your computer, you download the track log. Now watch what's going to happen is I'm going to go into Lightroom in the Maps module, and I'm going to go to this little squiggly line right here. And that squiggly line there, if I drop that down, I can load a track log. The track log I'm going to load is on my desktop, and it is called Lunch with Cord. Hit Choose. See my track log? So it shows where I went. See that? So now I can click on my track log, and I can say, oh, hold on, I'm going to select the photos. I'm going to select all these photos that I was taking, and I'm going to, on the track log, I'm going to say auto tag selected photos. Now there are 44 photos. See that? So I've got these 44 photos, and it's telling me where they were taken. So now I can double click those photos, and I can go through them and see, okay, well, these photos were taken at such and such a place. Now the problem is that my iPhone, right, and my camera are not exactly at the same time. So it's telling me that the photos were taken on King Street, which actually the photos weren't taken on King Street. They were taken at Mount Vernon. So what I have to do is I have to figure out how to change the time on these photos, right? So how do I change time on a photo so that it matches my track log? What's that? Metadata. So let's go back to the grid and let's highlight all of these images, and I'm going to go and find out what time it thinks these were taken, and I'm going to adjust it. So I'm going to click on here and I'm going to say, okay, let's adjust these images by going to the metadata, and it thinks that this picture right here was taken at 12:43 p.m., which that was about the time I was having lunch at the burger joint, right? So that's why it thought it was in town. So I can highlight all of these images now, and then I can say, okay, this wasn't taken at 12. Click on, I'm going to show you this. See that capture time right there? I click on this little button that looks like a list, and now I just changed the capture time. So it wasn't taken at 12:43. It was actually taken at about 3:43. Now I just changed everything by 3 hours. So I was able to adjust the time on all of these images by 3 hours. All right? So now let's go back to our map. Let's reload our track log. And let's select, let's auto tag those. And let's zoom out. See now we have 65 here and 6 here. So it's starting to separate those out. I don't know that I was correct on my time, by the way. But do you see how it separated out the tags? So now I'm starting to separate out these so that they're in different places.
How did you get the track log to begin with? I don't understand the interface of the iPhone.
Okay, so the track log is being recorded by the iPhone by an app that's just calling up the GPS locator and figuring out where it is. So what you need is you need something to track yourself. Then you take the track log from that and put it into your computer, and it just comes in as what's called a GPX. So that's the name of this. See, here, I'll show you that it's a GPX, .gpx file.
Everybody's using the same format?
Well, there's a couple format out there, so write down GPX. That's the format you want. And you'll bring in that track log, and then just make sure that your camera is tied to the time on your GPS device so that they're always the same. And then it will see the photos and when they were taken, it will import them and it'll tag them together, and then you'll be able to see where you were when you took the photos. It's a really good way to figure out where you are. I'll tell you a story. I was shooting some images in Stockholm, Sweden, and I was shooting them, and I shot all this before GPS was available on cameras or whatnot. And so then I was looking through them and I was trying to figure out what was the name of this building that I was shooting. I couldn't figure it out. So then I was on Google Earth looking around trying to find the damn building, you know, and it took me like an hour to find out where it was. And then I was looking at the top of buildings, so it was really hard. I was like, I know there's a square, and it was kind of off kilter, and it was like a triangle type of area. And so I had to find it, and it took me an hour to find out where this place was. If I'd had a track log, it would have just said, here's where the photo was taken. So track logs are awesome. A lot of point and shoots now actually have GPS on them. Yeah.
The iPhone app, what's it called?
The iPhone app is Easy Trails. So just make sure you have lots of battery life, because it will eat it up. Okay, so Maps is a really cool way, and if you decide, you know what, this is totally screwing up, and it's not actually tagging them in the right place, or I know where they were taken, then what you can do is put them where you want them. So I can say, okay, I know that this image here was taken at a specific spot. So I can drag that image onto my map and say it was taken here. So there it is. So you can actually just drag it to the place that you want it to be as well, and it will tag it. Now, if you do this, I'm going to caution you that you don't want to have pictures that you took at your home of your little kids out on the web, and some pervert can just, oh, that's where he lives, and go get him. It's like a shopping cart. So when you export an image, so I'm going to export this image right now, and when you export the image, at the very bottom you can see that it has an option to remove the location information. Anytime you export a JPEG or any image, remove that location data. And I would suggest if you are a professional photographer and you're shooting a cool location, I'd remove the location data. Because otherwise everybody will figure out where you're shooting. Wouldn't you rather people have to come to you because you know where all the locations are? So I would remove the location info all the time. I just would never put it down there. Keep that information to yourself because it's your own intellectual property as to what you know and where you know and what the best times to shoot at this location are. That's something you want to keep for yourself, even if you're not worried about people, finding the kids or whatever. Okay? Okay, so that is the maps. You can also search the maps. So if for instance, let's say I knew that some of these shots were shot at Mount Vernon, I can say, okay, I want to find Mount Vernon. So I'm going to type in MT Vernon, and then we'll VA, and search that. And we're going to go, where's Mount Vernon? Okay, there's Mount Vernon right there. So now I can go and say, let's go to, I know where that is. Let's go to the grid. Let's find the images that we shot at Mount Vernon. So from the sheep on. There we go. We've got all those guys. Let's go back to the map module. And let's grab all of these guys and put them right there at Mount Vernon. There we go. So now we have 124 here on Mount Vernon. And then we have, I don't know how many here, the one that I tagged there. Okay? Okay, so that's the map module. Very useful, very great way to find images, great way to look at your images. So I'm going to talk to you really quickly, very quickly about catalogs. Catalogs are it's like your brain. Your brain is a catalog of all the things you've seen in your life. Lightroom is a catalog of all the things that you've asked it to look at. So if you work, say, one catalog per job, you're only going to be able to see that information for that one job that you're working on, which is why I actually have what's called a portfolio catalog. So any image that I love and I'm going to use on a regular basis, that image gets put into my portfolio catalog. So anytime I'm looking for a specific photo to send off to a magazine or to put on my website or whatever, I go to the portfolio catalog, and then I can look at all my best imagery. Those are the only ones I want to search anyway. And by the way, if when you're finished with all your images, so let's go to the grid module and let's say I'm going to keep this set of images. Okay, so those are all my favorite images from this trip. So I highlight them all, go up to the library menu, or actually the photo menu, and I'm sorry, it is the library menu. I'm going to convert them to DNG. If you convert all your raw images to a DNG, all of the information is inside the DNG. Even though it's still a raw image, all the adjustments, all the keywords, all the tags, all the GPS location, all of it's in the DNG. And so if you want to find images across your entire hard drive, just search them without the catalog. You can search them in Bridge, you can search them from your system, and it will find all the images because the DNG has the information in it. So if you need to cross-search multiple catalogs, just do it via the DNG info that's actually in the file. Just go up to this little search spotlight and just type in wedding bride, and suddenly you're going to start seeing images that come up. And you notice JPEGs are coming up as well, because JPEGs have all that information in them as well. So DNGs, JPEGs, PSDs, all those are going to start coming up. But a raw image isn't going to, because it doesn't contain the data. So if you convert all your raw images to DNG, then all of that information will still be inside the image, even though it's still a raw image. So that the DNG is a great file type.
Do you have a shortcut for exporting your portfolio selects into a portfolio catalog?
Yes. So when I go to the export dialog box, I am going to create a DNG to my portfolio by using a preset. And I'm going to go right here to portfolio. Actually, they're down here. So portfolio, DNG. I click on portfolio DNG, and it does everything for me. And then I hit export, and it sends it to a specific location on my hard drive where the DNGs for the portfolio are supposed to be.
But it's not already in the catalog. You still have to import it to that catalog later?
You can, the question was, it's not already in the portfolio catalog when I get there. It can be. Because in Lightroom, you can create what's called a watched folder. If you create a watched folder, every time you open up Lightroom, it looks at that watched folder and pulls in everything that's new. So your portfolio catalog has a watched folder that's where all of my new images go, is to the watched folder. And then when I open it, it looks at the watched folder, pulls them in. So yes, it's always there when I come to the portfolio catalog. But you're making two copies. You have one copy in the job, and that one goes to an archive somewhere. The ones that stay on your computer in the portfolio, it's a secondary copy, and that's the one you're going to work from for the rest of your life. Okay? Yeah.
Is there a reason when you import the images you don't convert to DNG then?
Yes, because I don't want to convert 5,000. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting to repeat the question. Is there a reason that I don't import and change them to DNG on the way in? And the reason for that is that I don't want to spend the time to convert 5,000 images to DNG when I'm only keeping 500. I'll spend the time on the 500, not on the 5,000. Okay, so now we're going to go from the map module over to the book module, which is my favorite new option. This is the reason, the number one reason to be in Lightroom 4 is the book module. Now, I like the develop module. They did a good job with it. But even if you don't like the develop module, you want to go back to Lightroom 3, knock yourself out. But buy Lightroom 4 and use the book module and just use the 2010 math, which is a ridiculous idea, but you can knock yourself out if you want to do that. So it works with either creating a PDF, so you can make your own PDF and then send it to whatever book binder you want to, or you can send it to Blurb Books. And Blurb, if you want to see the quality of a Blurb book, this is a Blurb book. All the images, or all the books that you make from Lightroom 4 will be created on Blurb's ProLine paper. And the ProLine paper is thicker, it's better quality paper. So you can choose from like an uncoated or a coated stock. Really great papers. So you can check out a book up here. But basically, it's going to design all of the book for you, and you're going to be able to order it directly from Lightroom, send it to Blurb, they'll print it, they'll send it to you. Fantastic system, yeah.
From what I know, the first book you did, you will do from Lightroom has discount.
Yes, that's true. The first book that you run from Lightroom will have a discount. It's like a 20% discount. So just the first time you send a book in from Lightroom, it's got a discount. So fantastic, yeah. Yeah, watch this.
But what if you want to do it yourself?
Then you can do it yourself. So if you want to design it yourself, design it yourself. If you don't want to design it yourself, let it design it. So let's let it design it. So if I highlight all the images here, so I want to take all of these images from start to finish. I just want to make a book of my day and shift click to there. And I want to design a book. I'm going to go in and there's presets right up here. Everywhere in Lightroom you'll find presets. So the auto layout, I can create a preset. So if I create a preset, I'm going to say, let's make a new preset, and I can choose what's going to go on the left and what's going to go on the right page. So let's just say that I always want the left page to be blank. But I want the right page to have random designs from my favorites folder. Okay? And I want it to either have 1 or 2 photos on it. And I want them all to fill the box that it creates. Instead of fit them, I want to fill them. And then I want to add photo captions to them. Okay? So if I added photo captions in the description area, in the grid module, you know, over in the description area, then it would add those to the auto description portions where it's got text. And then I'm going to hit save. It's going to ask me to save it. I'm just going to call this BH photo, and I'm going to hit create. Now, I have a preset that I can use, but I also want to go in and make favorite layouts. So I go into the layouts, which is right here on the right-hand side, about midway down, and I'm going to go in and look for things with, say, 2 photos on them. And let's say I like this one, so I'll right-click it and add it to my favorites. I like this one, so I'll right-click it and add it to my favorites. And oh, I like this one, and I like this one. Okay, so I've got some images or some layouts in my favorites. You see that? Oh, and you know what? I also want to have a full bleed in my favorites. So I've got all of these in my favorites, and now I'm going to go to the auto layout and just hit auto layout. And I have my book made. Now notice it's got a blank page on the left because I decided I only want pictures on the right. And as I go through this book, I can see, oh, well, you know what? I really don't like the layout on this. So I'm going to click on this page, and I'm going to choose a new layout with 2 photos on it, but I want it to be like that. And I'm going to scan through this one. I don't like this one all that much, and so I'm going to do one page, or one picture on that page instead. And oh, by the way, I want to take this image and put it over on this page. So I'm going to grab it and drag it here, and it swapped the images. And I want this image here over here, and now it swapped those images. I want this image here, it swapped those images. Right? Are those giggles because, holy crap, why did I want to design my own? Right. So, yeah, so and there's my full bleed. I love the full bleed, and I want this one to fit. So I don't want it, I want it to fit, so I just drag that down, and now it's fitting that area there. And this one I want to zoom in a little bit and go like that. And I want this one to zoom in a bit. Now I don't want to zoom in, that's crazy. Okay.
Is it selecting the layouts based on the horizontal or vertical?
Yeah, it's making decisions intelligently based on, well, this is a vertical, so I should put a vertical in it. It's not always going to make that decision because it might, like if you don't give it any verticals, it won't choose a vertical. Or if you have a vertical and a horizontal and it's and there's 2 verticals next in line, it will put one vertical in a vertical and then the other vertical in a horizontal if you've chosen that.
It doesn't use the order of the photos in the
It does. So it is using the order of the photos first off. See, notice the ones in the burger joint are first, and then as you get further on in the book, you start getting to Mount Vernon. So it uses the order of the photos first off, but then if you don't give it enough options in the layouts, it will have to choose some that don't match yours. But it's just kind of trying to intelligently figure out what the best layout. But the great thing is that you can then just choose a different layout. So if you want to change this set to something new, so it's one photo, you can do that. And then you can also change, I want a different page on this, so let's do that one, and I can grab, notice that down here I've got ones, and then that one doesn't have one. That's because it wasn't used, because I removed it at one point. So I'm going to grab this and pull it into that layout, and now I've got that one. And notice now I can just scan through here and see, oh, I didn't use this one, and I can throw that one in there. But now that other one's not going to be used because see how it removed it. I can insert a page, so if I want a new page here, I can just go into here and say add a blank page. So now it just added a new blank page, and I can just drag this one in to that. Okay? So yes, you can design your own if you would like. But what they've done is they went in, and this was really cool. Lightroom went in, or the team went down to a bookstore, and they got every book at the bookstore that was photographic. And they looked at every single design that and they took the most common designs from the best books and put them in here. So pretty much, if it's a good design, it's right here. It's in one of these designs. Yeah.
So does this have more than Blurb? Or
No, I think Blurb, the Book Smart, Blurb, does this have more designs than Blurb does? Because if you go onto blurb.com, you can design a book on Blurb. I think they have more templates on Blurb, but these are the best templates, and they were designed by Adobe, not by Blurb. So Adobe went in and actually designed their own. And not only can you create a blurb book, but you can also create a PDF, so you don't have to send it to Blurb. You can print it out as a PDF and send it to another book bindery. But it's super simple, great quality, and tell you what, I've never spent over $120 on a book, and that's a 400-page book. You know, I mean, you can get a pretty big book for fairly cheap off of Blurb, and it's great quality. So I love them. All right, so that's the book designer. So I want to recap really quickly on a couple things. Remember, in the selection, we asked you to make 4 rules, right? We told you in the selection module, you need to make sure that you are doing things in a distractionless environment, that you're doing it by gut instinct, that you are selecting by positive selection. You're not rejecting things. You're just hitting the pick key when you want something picked. What's that?
By comparison.
And you're doing it by comparison, which is the 4th rule. So you're always looking at multiple images at the same time. When you're in the develop module, we talked about the importance of presets. Presets, you have several rules. Okay, and I mentioned a lot of rules, but I'm just going to kind of quickly run through them. I don't know if I'll get them in order, but first issue is that you need to have them organized well. So folders, names, rational names, make sure you use codes at the beginning to hold them in position. Okay? But when you're creating them, you want them to be very specific. So you don't make a big preset that does 1,000 things. You do presets that do very specific things, like vignettes. That's a preset. Black and white is a preset. A split tone is a preset. And then you can combine those by click 3 times, click, 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 and now you've got your ultimate preset very quickly. Okay? So make presets very rationally, very specifically, and think while you're making them. It'll take you a long time to make a preset. Like it should take you, when you're working on a photo, it should take you a long time to make the preset, because then you never have to do it again, and you do it, it's quick. Okay, so it may take you a couple minutes per preset to make them, but then you'll be very happy that you don't have to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I do suggest that everywhere in Lightroom that you are, there's a preset. If you do it more than once, make a preset. You should never do something more than once in Lightroom. After that, preset. Okay? And then to recap some of the cool things that we talked about, remember the exposure knob has changed. The entire basic area inside of Lightroom's Develop module is different. That's the most critical change that they made inside a Develop module. And they, of course, added the maps. They added the book module. The print module is pretty much the same, except now you have soft proofing, so you can see what the image is going to look like before you print it. And it also has the brightness and contrast addition to the print module. And there's a lot more stuff to Lightroom. If you're interested in taking the class, sign up now. It's $50 off on the online class. April 1st through April 30th is the time frame of that class. And you'll watch about an hour or so of video each week, and then you'll go into a Q&A session that you'll have 2 or 3 options per week, and you can choose whichever one you want, or you can attend all 3 if you want, and you'll ask questions about the video, and we'll answer, and we'll show you things online. So it's a great system. We're going to have a great time. It'll be basically 4 weeks of instruction. So join us there. Go to jaredplattworkshops.com. It's JAREDPLATT workshops.com to find out more about that. I'm going to sign off here to the people that are online. Say thank you for attending.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.